Welcome, everyone, to the Scaling Smart podcast, where we bring together industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and innovators to discuss key insights, strategies, and their experiences that have driven success both for themselves and their customers. I'm Billy Mitchell, your host, and today I'm really excited to introduce a special guest, Wendy Lieber, co-founder and CEO of Content Bacon, which is a subscription-based content marketing agency helping businesses attract, engage, and retain customers through authentic, story-driven content strategies. Wendy, thanks so much for joining us today. How are you?
I am great. Thank you for having me, Billy.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have this conversation, and I will say right off the bat, you have by far the best name of a
Of
business that I've
course.
ever seen. Love it. So my first
Thank
question,
you.
before I get into anything else, how did you come up with Content Bacon?
Yeah, so when my partner and I were starting this company, we would go to this bar every Friday afternoon and kind of work on our business plan and branding. And we just did a typical naming exercise where we came up with lots of different ideas for names and, would check them out, which ones were available. And Content Bacon was one of them, and it was my favorite. And it was available, and the rest is history. But
I
it
love it.
it has been one of the best decisions because any great brand, right? It's memorable. It tells a
Mhm.
micro story. It creates usually a little chuckle or levity. So I'm very happy with that decision.
That's awesome. Yeah, very good. Well, as a fan of bacon and beef bacon specifically,
Oh
I
yeah,
was glad to have this conversation. All right, so just to give you some kind of prep for what we're about to do, as well as our audience, we break this interview up into three separate categories. We want to talk about you and your organization, kind of how you got to the point that you're at, and what was the bit of the story behind starting your organization. We want to talk about the industry as a whole, which me having a paid media agency, I actually have quite a bit of good insight into your industry, which means I'm excited to actually talk to an expert in it. And then want to find out more about your ideal client profile, and then getting into the meat and potatoes of the overall point of this podcast, which is growth and scale. It's what our audience wants to hear, kind of get some nuggets of what they might be able to take away for themselves. You ready to
sounds
jump into
good.
it?
Let's do it.
Cool. All right. First question for you. Let's get an overview of who you are, how you got here, why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, so Content Bacon is my second company. I had a previous company called Athena Marketing that was a very boutique strategic marketing consulting company. And I'd gotten it, I'll say fairly successful. It was like $500,000. It was really just me. It was like I guess people would refer to it as a lifestyle business. It was not super scalable, and it also wasn't something I was really that interested in scaling. Like I didn't want to build an agency. And I happened to be in this accelerator program at the time that was all about growing your business to over $1 million. And during that time, I started like looking at my business and which things were scalable. And I was doing some, basic content marketing for a couple companies. And so I said, let me kind of take that and create like a side, offering. And so I offered just basic like email newsletter, social media, article writing to a bunch of my clients at the time for a fixed amount. Give me your credit card, I'll charge you every month. And they all bit like super easy. And I was like, wow, like this is, there's something here. And then I met my partner in the same program. He had a branding company, and he was also kind of looking for a way to scale and had like a video product that kind of similar to the written content I was doing. So we decided to give birth to Content Bacon, and it grew within the first year to over $1 million. And
Wow.
yeah, it was, and since then we have really been able to grow and scale because I think we hit on a very specific need that so many companies were having, and the way we packaged it, this subscription model was very unique. I dare say we were the first to do it in this space.
Hmm.
So yeah.
That's neat. And let's unpack the actual product and the service itself that has made you unique. Tell
Sure.
us a little bit about what it looks like to partner with you, and if I say, "Hey, I need help," what am I needing help in, and what's my end result?
Absolutely. So we really look at the content through the lens of the customer journey. We also kind of use the flywheel strategy where it's how do you attract strangers, turn them into visitors, turn those visitors into interested, whether they're different types of leads. How do you turn those leads into customers? How do you turn those customers into repeat customers and referral sources? So that flywheel strategy, when you look at it, usually helps determine a company's goals because a lot of times, they may need help in all parts of that journey, but often they might be stuck in one or two particular areas. And so we'll build a content strategy to support whatever their goals are. And so if it's awareness, like let's just say they've never had a strong digital presence and no one really knows about them, but they have this great story to tell, which is often the case. It's one of my mantras. Like I believe most companies have a great story to tell. They're just doing it poorly or they're not doing it at all. And we really love coming in and being that conduit. And so we'll build, from the basics, what's your website content look like? Do you have educational articles? I kind of group articles into educate, inform, entertain, and inspire. Social media post, do you have a monthly newsletter? And those might sound pretty basic and pretty boring. And in some ways they are, but that foundation does work and builds a very strong foundation. And then beyond that, we can, go deeper and build thought leadership, more video content, specific email nurturing campaigns. Something more recently that we've added to our menu is we were always doing it more organically, but we've really now integrated a company's CRM into the offering to really make sure they're leveraging their CRM and that they've got the content to support it. Because what I've found is a lot of companies are always focusing on new, 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 and they don't realize that they have millions of dollars sitting in their database if only segmented, nurtured, monitored, and measured properly. So now we integrate that into our offering as well, which really gives us more skin in the game, which we love, and more accountability, but also ultimately gives our customers more tangible results.
Yeah, that's very unique, and I like the concept of the customer journey being how you're mapping out your
Yeah.
process. We do something very similar on the paid side, is top of funnel, mid
Yeah.
funnel, bottom of funnel, but then you hit into a very important component of that is, all right, they've converted on your site in some capacity. They've given you their contact information. Now that data is sitting in a CRM somewhere, sometimes an Excel sheet. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So even
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
large
It's
customers
true.
don't have CRMs. And then what, right? And so we have a very similar approach in, yeah, let's make sure that we're retargeting them. Let's make sure that we know and understand the pipeline value that you have and how can we maximize that. So I love that your strategies are also including targeting the not only the new customers and where they're at in that journey, but also existing customers, existing data
Yeah.
that you can maximize. Yeah, good
I think
stuff.
a really great challenge for companies to take on is if you could not get a new lead for the next 90 days and you had to generate your revenue goals with what you have, what would you do? And I think most companies are amazed that they can create their goals and then some because they're now focused on, well, what can we do with existing customers? What about past customers? When's the last time we spoke to them? So there's always so much opportunity if you're willing to look at your business through a different lens and just not be like new, 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 which a lot of us, guilty at times, are always focused on. So much easier.
That's that's an incredible challenge, and I would say I'm gonna personally do it. Think about
Yeah.
that is over the next 90 days, what would I do if I didn't have new outbound or new inbound, I guess, um, lead generation. That's phenomenal, and I would highly encourage all of our audience to do that as well. So we have a good understanding of your company and the product, the service. Let's talk about your customers. If you could describe your ideal client profile, what does it look like?
Yes. So we love working with growth-oriented companies, and they're typically small to medium-sized businesses, you know, 3 to 50 million, somewhere in that range. Could be, 5 to 50 employees. But it's really companies that value content. They usually have a longer sales cycle, so it's not transactional, and the purchase amount is meaningful, which again leads back to not transactional. And they're very interested in building relationships. So, and they like to use content and they value the use of content to do that. So they're not just interested in, let me, put up, thousands of pages, SEO the crap out of those pages. Let me bombard my audience with, they're not doing that. They're really interested in using content to go back. I'll go back to the educate, entertain, inform, and inspire, add value. And so those are the companies that we work best with that are very interested in human connection. Now, using, different technology, AI to create that, no issue. But the end result is I want to build a relationship. I'm not just interested in, the transaction or just the numbers.
That's
And they're
good.
usually, if not, I mean, the majority of our customers are in the B2B world. I mean, we do have some B2C and we can absolutely support that, but using that other criteria, that typically means it's many instances in the B2B world.
Yeah, I resonate with that. Oftentimes, our best customers have high ticket value
Yeah,
items, longer sales cycle, requiring relational development, relational equity in that close. And often there's multiple touch points across
yeah,
that sales process. Um, so it provides for the opportunity of building trust, demonstrating expertise, and by the time that the consumer is ready to purchase or the customer is ready to purchase, they're pretty well equipped to know what they're buying. And
yeah.
I can see that your work, your content is helping educate and inspire that process. That's good.
There's a really great statistic. I need to look it up and see what the current one is, but it's something like 70% of your prospects have done their research, and by the time they like contact you, like they're almost like ready to make the decision. They're just like checking off a couple more boxes. And the takeaway there is, yeah, we all can relate, right? We're all doing our research, even if you get the best referral, even, like use this company, they're the best at, whatever, SEO. You're still going to look at their site, you're going to look at their social media. You're and if what you see doesn't confirm that trust that, the referral gave you, you'll bounce. Like if you see their site hasn't been updated or their social media is inactive or like something doesn't look or smell right, like you will never contact them. Versus if you do contact them, it's likely, as long as those calls match and who you're talking to kind of feels like the same company. It's not, like funny, witty, personable, and then you're talking to a robot. Like you're going to close the sale. And so I often will refer to a lot of what we do as sales lubrication, because that's really what it is, people want to do research when and how they want. And if they can't find you, then, you're never going to have the opportunity.
That's good. I like that, and I'm actually going to steal that one. Sales lubrication.
And
That's good.
it's yours.
Awesome. Hey, let's talk about the industry. And I would imagine that not only is the industry pretty competitive as a whole, but it's also going through some pretty big changes, I would think. So let's start with the competitiveness. How competitive is your industry, and how are you sticking out to be the best in it?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely lots of different ways companies can get their content needs supplied, from freelancers and, tools like Upwork and Fiverr to, a lot of agencies tout they do content, to obviously now the biggest one, AI. So you're correct. There's a lot of competition out there. unique selling proposition is we're very much done for you. So when a company works with us, we are definitely like partnering with them and removing all the roadblocks and really making it easy and cost effective to work together. So um, I think that's one of the key ways we're standing out. I do think like our us integrating with the company's CRM and really making sure that what we're doing can be tied to results is another key differentiator, because all the content in the world, if not distributed and measured correctly, won't get you anywhere. And it's definitely the type of content we do and the care we put into it, and really making sure it's got that human touch, and you know, it has soul, makes you feel
Mm.
something. And even if that feeling something, it makes you angry, it makes you inspired, but that's really what we're going for. And that might sound easy, but it's really not. And really being able to listen to our customers, because often what they think their unique selling proposition is or their offer, it's not necessarily always spot on. And the process of creating content actually helps you become a better business, because you're constantly having to share your story and reiterate it different ways. And if you don't have that internally, it's hard to have like an internally aligned team. So I always get really excited about just the process of creating it, because often people just filling out our onboarding questionnaire, they learn something about their own business that they've forgotten or, not even aware of. So I know I just said a lot of things. Hopefully some of that made sense.
No, it's very good. And I would say just in the little I've gotten to know you and talking before recording the podcast, I would say everything you just said aligns perfectly with who you are and what I perceive you to be. So I think the authenticity is a critical component to that. And also really interesting, but it completely makes sense that the more you write about your business, the more you're going to realize what you do and how well you do it and be able to tell your story better. Like it's such an obvious thing, but it seems like it might be overlooked often.
So often. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, hey, where do you see your industry going in the next 5 to 10 years? And I'm actually going to go ahead and caveat that. I'm going to say next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, so for sure, AI has become a huge part of the industry, and it's created lots and lots of content in a way that's just so much noise. And so I think that's going to continue. And I think the companies that continue to master the basics don't just put out a lot of content for the sake of content, but really focus on that personalized, customized relationship and the human touch are going to be the ones that stand out. So I really think companies like ours that, again, of course, we're using AI tools to help the process. Of course, we're doing as much as we can to use AI to make things, better, faster, more effective, but with that, not negating that the human touch, the human experience is still so important. So I think, that's going to become more and more as companies that are relying on AI solely, which I was just on a learning event yesterday talking about how, SEO, don't hang on my words, SEO is dead and it's now AI optimization. And we had this like amazing, guest with like a scientific approach that was talking about it. And it's so fascinating. But his takeaway was exactly what I'm saying, is that the AI generated content will not be the content that they don't even use the word ranks anymore. It'll be like that has relevancy, and it's going to
Mm.
be the more higher quality, higher touch content. So I think that there's going to be, companies that are just AI and that's it. And then there's going to be those that double down on the human connection, human interaction, and, not just being more noise in the industry.
Yeah, I think AI is obviously playing a big role in our industry as well and our approach. and you mentioned it, but AI with a human touch, right?
Yeah.
So it's AI, then human, sometimes AI again, but always ends with human. And I think that's really critical to managing it successfully.
I always like to say, and I think you could say this about a lot of things, but AI is here to serve us, not us serve AI. And I think it's really important to like we have an AI manifesto within our company that we created. So like everyone in our company could understand, because of course people are scared, like, is AI taking over my job? And so us creating what, and even our customers like wanting to make sure like I'm not paying you and you're just using AI and spitting out. So all of that, factoring that in is really, really important. And so I think having a stance and I think just as a society, like us just making sure, AI is here to serve us, like not the other way around, because that would not be a good look over time.
Yep, I was just going to say AI is here to serve us until they realize that we're here to serve them. But that's
Right.
another conversation.
Exactly.
Oh, that's funny. All right, let's go ahead and jump into really the meat and potatoes and growth and scale. So I want to learn about how you've grown your business and what you're working on to continue to grow it, but also what hasn't worked. So today, where do you get your new customers?
Yeah, so we get our new customers. We do for ourselves what, we advocate for our customers. So we have our own flywheel strategy and are constantly creating content that, helps solve problems, makes you smarter, all that good stuff. We do a lot of learning events. We create partnerships with other companies where they don't want to develop their own content department, so they plug us in. So we do a lot of different things too, and we get a lot of referrals. That's my I guess my biggest source of pride when we get referrals. So we try to cover up our parts of the flywheel. Admittedly, sometimes our own stuff gets ignored. Like we'll go through growth spurts where it's like all of a sudden our own marketing gets put on the back burner. We've gotten better and better in that at that. We try to treat content bacon as a customer and treat ourselves the same way we treat our other customers. So making sure we give ourselves that same attention. But that's how we've been growing, and that's how we've been getting our new customers. And then I think as we've added new products and services, that's really helped us grow with existing customers. It's helped customers from the past that might have brought in an in-house resource come back to us because they're like, oh, we're not doing that. And then certainly it's put us on the radar differently for companies who may have not felt they needed our services, but are all of a sudden like, yeah, I'm not really getting what I want out of my CRM. Let's have you take a look. So I think adding new products and services is, I think, a really key growth strategy that all companies should be thinking about, not just for the sake of adding, but having that so that you're constantly innovating, I think is really important to stay current and relevant.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's been a hyper focus of ours this year as well, is taking a look at our existing customers and saying there are pieces of value that we can add that is going to serve them well, but it's also going to have an incredible halo effect of impacting everything else we're doing. So I can understand your point there as well as the innovation. I think that's a really good key takeaway because if you're not innovating, you're dying, right? So if you're not growing, you're
Totally.
dying.
100%.
Um, let's dive into the partnerships. Curious, what kind of partnerships are you growing with, and what are some of those characteristics that make a good partnership work?
So we've been really lucky. This was always an area I wanted to grow. And then, I feel like what happens a lot with companies that want to grow through partnerships, you have great conversation, right? You'll have a couple great conversation, you see all this opportunity, but then nothing really happens, right? Because it tends to be a heavy lift to take it to the next level and try a pilot project or whatever the case is. So one of the things we identified, we were having great conversations with other agencies, some more traditional digital media agencies, some pure SEO, where content was certainly a big piece. And we really just started to look at, okay, what is stopping these companies from moving forward with us? And we realized a couple things. One, it was if they had to work outside of their system, it was going to be more difficult to utilize us. So we started making it like, hey, if you're using, ClickUp or, Basecamp, whatever project management system you're using, we will work inside of that so that it's very easy to work with us and know where everything's at any given moment. And then that was the other thing, building processes that aligned with them so that it was very clear how to work with us and it wasn't this like ambiguous, yeah, content bacon would be great, but it's like this is, these are the type of things we can do, this is how we will do them, this is how we'll make your life easier. So it was really taking the heavy lift on so that it became a no-brainer for them. And so I have to credit, my operations team for that because we've got really great processes within Content Bacon, and I do believe that's been the biggest, most instrumental reason why we've been able to, take those great conversations I have and turn them into actual customer relationships is because we're willing to work in their systems. We figure out what the bottlenecks are and we solve it for them, and then we just kind of rinse and repeat, but we take ownership of that.
That's really powerful, and I think a really good takeaway is having partnership conversations is it's great. Oftentimes it's fun and you feel very productive, right? But then it just gets pushed to the side, deprioritized, whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
But you brought up a really good piece, which is having that established process and SOP or way of doing that is easy to bolt on, right?
Yeah.
So being able to say, this is how we do what we do. And not only that, this is how we can do for you or your customers what we do. And it becomes very clean, very clear. Um, Everybody knows the lane that they should be staying in, and everybody knows what to expect. So I
Yeah,
think that's really a key to the success with partnerships.
absolutely. Processes drive most everything, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's good. And I think that's a really good takeaway. So I'm going to go a little bit personal and then
Yeah.
I've got a lightning round, which I didn't prep you for, so that's good. But it's really simple. It's really easy. Ask you a couple questions. First thing comes to your mind. So let's start with the last question though, go a little more on the personal side. If you could think of one of the biggest challenges you faced, maybe personally or in your career, what was it? How has it shaped you? And maybe even how has it changed the way you do business today?
Goodness, so many. I think that's one of the great things about being an entrepreneur, being a leader, is that there's just constant growth, right? I'm a big believer that an organization is only held back by the ability of its leader to grow. And so if your organization isn't growing, it's typically has something to do with the leader. And so, I mean, that's a big takeaway, right? Because it's, really taking that on takes a lot of introspection and willingness to look at yourself and where you're holding things back. And some things I have uncovered and then, I've solved and then just gotten to another layer is it's control. My previous company, I was the sole, I ate what I killed. Well, when I started growing Content Bacon and started handing over those customer relationships, I really had anxiety, might be too strong of a word, but anxiety control issues with like, well, how are they talking to them? Are they getting back to them fast enough? So what if they texted them at 3 a.m. in the morning? Text them back. Like the standards I hold myself to, and being willing to let my team do it their way, with a framework, with guidelines, and be okay with it being 70% of how I might do it, which actually might, in many instances, be better. Like many instances, my team is doing it better than me because they are looking at it through a more process driven approach and not this maverick entrepreneurial approach that'll figure out how to make things happen at all costs. And so I think that was one of my biggest growths that has continued to, every time we get to a new level. Um, and then, I really think like coaching and developing my team and spending that time and not just being so focused on growth and all the actions that are required to keep content bacon, productive, but spending that time with the individuals, getting to know them, what do they want, where do they want to go, where are they struggling, and coaching and developing them. And so that's been really fun, which is also one of my favorite ways to spend my time is you know developing other leaders and seeing them thrive and see how what we do internally can also impact their other aspects of their lives. Like, we're big into being like direct communication, no BS, and have the tough conversations. And I've seen people on my team and they've shared with me, like, I've taken that approach with my husband or my parents. And so that gives me a lot of fulfillment when I see how we treat and develop our team internally has a greater impact on their lives, which, is hopefully like a ripple effect.
Honestly, I couldn't have said it better. I could not agree with you more. I think that there was so much wisdom and value in there. I think I just want to let that sit and let our audience take away what they want. But I'm right there with you. So I love it. Thank you so much for
Thanks.
that. And thank you for taking some time with us. I want to jump into the lightning round. It's
All
really,
right.
really simple, laid back. Don't stress too much.
I know
But
I'm nervous.
I'm gonna ask you, yeah, I'm gonna ask you some questions. First thing that comes to your mind is what I want to hear. You ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
All right. What's one tool or system you rely on to keep your organization running smoothly?
Slack.
Same here. Biggest trend do you think is going to shape your industry in the next 5 years? I think I know the answer.
Yeah, it's definitely AI.
All righty. Favorite book, podcast, or resource that has influenced you?
Oh, goodness. There's so many, but one that's been my favorite recently, it's going to seem odd, but I'm addicted to Chef's Table on Netflix. And I just
Okay.
find the entrepreneurial lessons from those, and I guess like the restaurant business, like, we kind of use a lot of that language, content bacon, but watching these chefs there, and there's one that just came out that's like 4 episodes on legends, and I just get so inspired and I pull away so many takeaways. Another book, Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Goddard, is like talks about service in a way that again just inspires me so much because I just believe at the end of the day, providing value and excellence to your internal, external customers. I mean, that's what lights me up. And this book just really like, ignited that. So if you haven't read it or listened to it, I highly recommend, and then send me a note to thank me.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, and I will definitely do that. And what's funny is ever since starting to record this podcast, I'm getting all these great book ideas. And I just had a couple books delivered like last week. And my wife's like, "How do you have all the time to read these books?" I'm like, I don't know. I'm gonna have to figure it out. Somebody said it was a good book, so I got to read it.
Yeah.
All right. What is one bucket list item you've already checked off?
Oh, I went to Iceland. I actually took my
Ooh,
parents. They had never been to Europe, and so I took my parents on a cruise, and we went to Ireland, Scotland, England, and we spent quite a bit of time in Iceland, and it was amazing. That was two summers ago.
that sounds phenomenal. And
It
that
was.
sounds like something I'm gonna have to do. All right. What's one bucket list item or goal that you're still working towards?
Well, in August, I'm doing a 16-day river rafting in the Grand Canyon, and so I wouldn't have necessarily thought it would be on my bucket list because it's like being disconnected for 16 days, camping out. But I'm super excited because of that. It's like out of my comfort zone and
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know what to expect. And I have like a little bit of fear, all of the good things.
Sure.
And so, yeah, so that's coming up. So stay tuned.
Man, that sounds wonderful, and I cannot wait to
Yeah.
hear about it. And finally, Wendy, if our listeners want to connect with you, what's the best way to get in touch?
I am on all social media, Wendy Lieber, Lieber. I'm easy to find, Wendy with a Y at Content Bacon. So I love hearing from people. So please reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn, or any Instagram. I love being active on all the channels.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast. For
Thank
everybody
you.
else, that's a wrap of this episode of Scaling Smart. I'm your host, Billy Mitchell, and I want to thank you for tuning in to Scaling Smart Podcast, where we have conversations with real people who have real stories who have learned how to scale smart.